In an election in Kimball County, candidate A obtained 36,800 votes. His opponent, candidate B, obtained 32,100 votes. 2,100 votes went to write-in candidates. What percentage of the votes went to candidate A? To find a percent, we need the part over the whole. And we know the part. The part is the number of votes candidate A received, which is 36,800. What I need to know is the whole, or the total number of votes. To find the total number of votes, we need to add up 36,800, 32,100, and 2,100 so that we can find the total. So we're adding, those are 0, and again we get 0. Then we have 8, 9, 10, so that's a 0, carry the 1. We have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, carry the 1. And we have 3, 6, 7. So that means there were a total of 71,000 votes. Now to find our percent, we need to divide. That'll give us our decimal, which will then change into a percent. But before I divide, I'm going to first simplify this fraction by canceling 2 zeros. And now my division will be a lot easier. So we need to divide 368 by 710. Well, 710 doesn't go into 368 at all, which means I'm going to have to add a decimal and a 0. And now I can divide 710 into 3,680. So I can use compatible numbers here, and 710 is very close to 700. 700 times 5 would be 3,500. So I'm thinking 710 is going to go about 5 times into 3,680. So let me multiply this. We get 0, and that's 5, and that's 35. So 3,550. Yep, looks good. So that's 5. We have 3,550. Now we need to subtract, and that's 0, 3, 1, so 130. Then we need to add a 0 and bring it down. 1,300. So 710, and it's only going to go into 1,300 one time because 700 plus 700 would be 1,400, and that's too much. So it's just one time. 710 times 1 is 710. Then we need to subtract. So I'm going to borrow from the 1, that's a 0, that's 13. Borrow from the 13, that's 12, which makes that 10. And we'll borrow, well, we don't need to borrow, that's 0. So 10 minus 1 is 9. And 12 minus 7 is 5, 590, which makes sense. If you add 90 back to 710, you get 800. And if you add 500 to 800, you get the 1,300. So we need to add another 0 and bring it down. So now we need to know how many times 710 goes into 5,900. So I'm again going to use that compatible number of 700. So let's see, 700 times 8 would be 5,600. So I'm thinking it goes in there about 8 times. So that's 0, and that's 8, and that's 56. So yes, that's very close. So that's 8. And we have 5,680. We can subtract, and that's 0. Borrow from the 9, that's an 8, so that's 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. 8 minus 6 is 2, so we get 220. And we could keep going, but really, that's all I need to know, because as I look at my answers, it's very clear which one of these is my answer. This is, well, it's about 518 thousandths, and then when we change it into our percent, we move our decimal 2 places to the right, we get 51.8%, which is answer A. What is the area of the figure shown? Well, there are a few different ways you could approach this problem, but I'm going to show you one. And that is to first find the area of this whole rectangle, and then simply to subtract the area of this rectangle here, since that's the only part that's missing out of this large rectangle. So first, we'll find the area of the large rectangle. And the area of a rectangle is the length times the width. So the area of the large rectangle is 20 feet times 50 feet. So the area is 2 times 5 is 10, 0, 0. 1,000 feet times feet, feet squared. So the area of the large rectangle is 1,000 feet squared. Now we need to find the area of this smaller rectangle, the only part that's missing out of our large rectangle. So I'm going to label this. This is the area of the large rectangle. Now we're going to find the area of the small rectangle. So again, area is the length times the width. And we have the length and the width for our small rectangle as well, 15 feet and 6 feet. So the area is 15 feet times 6 feet. 6 times 10 is 60. 6 times 5 is 30. So 30 plus 60 is 90. Feet times feet is feet squared. So the area of this little rectangle is 90 feet squared. So to find the area of this figure, we have to subtract the area of our large rectangle, 1,000 feet squared, minus the area of that small rectangle cutout, which is 90 feet squared. And 1,000 minus 90 is 910 feet squared. And that's the area of our figure. Kyle bats third in the batting order for the Badgers baseball team. The table shows the number of hits that Kyle had in each of 7 consecutive games played during 1 week in July. What is the mean of the numbers in the distribution shown in the table? Well, the mean of a set of numbers is the average. And to find the average or the mean, you must add all of the numbers together and then divide them by the number of numbers there are. So first we'll add all the numbers together. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 4 plus 2. Then we divide by the number of numbers there are, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we divide by 7. And again, this is how we find the mean. Add the numbers together and then divide by the number of numbers there are. So that is 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. Plus 1 is 8. Plus 4 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. So 14 divided by 7. And 14 divided by 7 is 2. Therefore, the mean or the average of these numbers is 2. In the figure, A, B, and C are points on the number line, where O is the origin. What is the ratio of the distance BC to the distance AB? So first we need to find the distance between points B and C. And the distance between 2 points is the absolute value of the difference of the coordinates. So that is the absolute value of B is 5 minus C is 8, which is the absolute value of -3, and that is 3. So the distance between points B and C is 3. Now we're going to do the same thing to find the distance between points A and B. And again, it's the absolute value of the difference of the coordinates of point A and point B. So that's the absolute value of A is -6 minus B is 5, which is the absolute value of -6 minus 5 is -11, and that is 11. So the distance from point A to point B is 11. Now they've asked us what the ratio of those distances is. And it gives you the order that it wants the ratio written in. So the distance BC should be the first number in the ratio, 3, to, and we use a colon, or you can write 2, it's fine too, the distance from points A to B, which is 11. So our ratio is 3 to 11, or answer D. The expressions y equals -3x plus 6 and y equals 2x minus 4 represent straight lines. Compute the coordinates of the point at which they intersect. This can be done by substituting 2x minus 4 for y in our other expression, or by substituting -3x plus 6 for y in this expression. Either way, the result is 2x minus 4 equals -3x plus 6. Now we need to solve for x. First, I'll add 3x to both sides so that I can get all my x variables on one side of the equation. 2x plus 3x is 5x minus 4 equals -3x plus 3x cancels, and I'm left with 6 on the right side. Now we need to add 4 to both sides. Bring down the 5x. -4 plus 4 is 0 equals 10. And finally, we need to divide both sides by 5 to solve for x. 5 divided by 5 is 1, times x is x, and that equals 10 divided by 5, which is 2. We're halfway there now. We've found what x is. To find y, we need to substitute 2 for x in either one of these expressions. And I'm going to use the second one. Since x is 2, we need to replace x with 2 to find y. So y equals 2 times 2 minus 4. Y equals 2 times 2 is 4 minus 4. So y equals 0. Our ordered pair is 2, 0. And you can always check this by plugging this ordered pair back into both of your expressions. And you should get a true mathematical equation there when you do that. And if you didn't, then you know that you made an error somewhere in your work. Pradeep decides to invest $4,500 in Cisco Systems stock and buys it at the price shown in the table. At what price should he sell it to obtain a profit of 10%? So he's buying Cisco Systems stock at $3.50 per share. If he wants to make a profit of 10%, then he needs to sell his stock when the price per share is 10% higher. And there are several ways to solve this problem. I'll show you one. So first I want to know, what is 10% of $3.50? Well, of means to multiply. So I'm multiplying times 1/10 or times 10 hundredths. And multiplying times 10 hundredths means just moving that decimal one place to the left. So that is 35 hundredths or 35 cents. So that means that his stock needs to be 35 cents higher. The price per share needs to be 35 cents greater. So $3.50 plus 35 cents is $3.85. So in order to make a profit, a 10% profit, then he needs to sell his stock at $3.85 per share. The Charleston Recycling Company collects 50,000 tons of recyclable material every month. The chart shows the kinds of materials that are collected by the company's 5 trucks. Approximately how much paper is recycled every month? This pie chart is a total of 100%. And it's a total 100% of 50,000 tons. So this 40% means 40% of the total. Paper is 40%, so 40% of the total amount of recyclable material collected, or 50,000 tons, 40% of that is paper. And that's what we want to find, is how much is that? Well, of means to multiply. And I'm going to multiply 40% and 50,000, which means I need to change 40% to a decimal. So move the decimal 2 places to the left. So I'm actually multiplying 4/10 or 40 hundredths, it's the same thing, times 50,000. So we have 50,000 times 4/10. 4 times 0 is 0, 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 and 4 times 5 is 20. We have one number behind the decimal, so our answer should have one number behind the decimal, and we get 20,000 tons. So 20,000 tons of the total 50,000 tons of recyclable material is paper. Determine the midpoint of the line shown in the figure. We will use the midpoint formula to find the midpoint of this line. The midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So what you're doing is, you're adding your two x coordinates together from the two endpoints and dividing that sum by 2. Basically finding the average of the x values, which would be the middle of the x values, and then doing the same with your y coordinates of your two endpoints. You'll add those together and then divide that sum by 2. Again, finding the average of those y coordinates, or the middle of the y coordinates. So when you find the middle x coordinate and the middle y coordinate, you'll then have the coordinates of the midpoint. But first we need to know the coordinates of our endpoints. So this endpoint is at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, positive 1, 2, 3, 4. So these coordinates are negative 4, 4 for this endpoint. And this endpoint is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 2. These are my x1, y1, x2, y2 coordinates. And it doesn't matter which one you label as your x1, y1, as long as you label them consistently. For instance, this could not be my x2, y1. Since this is my x2 coordinate, that means this is my y2 coordinate. And those subscripts, the 1s and the 2s, all that means is this is the first point, this is the second point. But it really doesn't matter which point is your first and which point is your second. So I just usually label them from left to right. And now all we need to do is substitute and solve. So the midpoint is x1 plus x2, so negative 4 plus 6 divided by 2. And then y1 plus y2, 4 plus negative 2 divided by 2. Now we need to simplify by adding. Negative 4 plus 6 is 2 divided by 2. 4 plus negative 2 is 2 divided by 2. And finally we divide. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So the midpoint is 1, 1, which you can see on this graph, over 1, up 1. And you know that point does look like it's right in the middle of that line. So that's our midpoint. A sailboat is 19 meters long. What is its length in inches? There are many ways to approach this problem and solve it. The first thing I'm going to do is convert my meters into centimeters, because then it's a quick conversion into inches from there. So I know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. And we can use a proportion to solve. We can take this conversion factor and use it as a ratio. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters, which equals 19 meters is how many centimeters? And then to solve the proportion, we cross multiply. 1 times x is x, and 100 times 19 is 1900. So it's 1900 centimeters. Now I can use another proportion to solve for, or to find inches. I know that 2 54 centimeters is 1 inch. And I have 1900 centimeters. And I need to know how many inches that is. And again, to solve a proportion, we cross multiply. So 2 54 centimeters times x, 2 54 x, is equal to 1 times 1900, which is 1900. And I forgot to put my little line up here, so I'll do that. And now we need to solve for x, which means dividing both sides by 2 and 54/100ths. 2 and 54/100ths divided by 2 and 54/100ths is 1 times x is x. And that equals 1900 divided by 2 and 54/100ths. So we need to do some division. Which means I have to move this decimal 2 places to the right. So I have to take my decimal 1900 and move it 2 places to the right, which means adding 2 zeros. So now my number is 190,000 being divided by 254. So 254 does not go into 1, or into 19, or into 190. But it does go into 1900. And we can use compatible numbers here to get a very quick estimate of how many times it goes into 1900. So 254 is very close to 250. So 250, 500, 750, 1,000, 1,250, 1,500, 1,750, 1,800. So it would, 1,750 and then 2,000. So it only goes 7 times because 2,000 is too much. So 254 only goes 7 times into 1900, and we can see what that is right here. 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 5 is 35. 36, 37. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 3 is 17. So it's 1,778. And then we subtract those, and we have to borrow from the 9, and that becomes an 8. So this is 10, and we borrow from the 10, it becomes a 9. This is 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 7 is 2. And 8 minus 7 is 1, 122. So now we bring down our next 0. And again, we can use that 250 rule to see how many times it goes into 1,220. So 250, 500, 750, 1,000. And then it would be 1,250, but 1,250 is too much. So it only goes 4 times. So let's see, 254 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, carry the 1. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 is 21. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So that's 1,016. And then we subtract. So we need to borrow from this 2, that becomes a 1. So this is 10 minus 6 is 4. 1 minus 1 is 0. And 2 minus 0 is 2. So that's 204. And then we bring down our 0 here. So again, how many times does 250 go into 2,040? So we have 250, 500, 750, 1,000. So 4 more times for 2,000. So it looks like a total of 8 times. So let's see, let's check that. See where I have some room. We'll just do it up here. 254 times 8. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 3, 43. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 4 is 20. So it's 8 times is correct, and it's 2,032. We subtract and we get 8. And that would be our remainder. It'd be 8 out of 254, or we could keep going to find our decimal. But if we look at our answers, we don't need to keep going because none of our answers have the decimal as part of it. So our answer is D, 748 inches. There are 64 squares on a checkerboard. Bobby puts 1 penny on the first square, 2 on the second square, 4 on the third, 8 on the fourth, and continues to double the number of coins at each square until he has covered all 64 squares. How many coins must he place upon the last square? The first thing I want to do is take this information out and organize it. So I've got two pieces of information here. I've got these number of squares and also how many coins are on the squares. So I'm going to organize it as squares and number of coins. So it says he puts 1 penny on the first square. So square 1, 1 penny. 2 on the second square. Second square, 2 pennies. 4 pennies on the third square. So third square, 4 pennies. 8 on the fourth square. So fourth square, 8 pennies. And so on like that, it keeps doubling. So another important word here is double. Really, we don't even have to find the pattern. They told us what it was. We're doubling. So this is 1 times 2 is 2. Times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. So since I know I'm doubling, then I have a base of 2. So on the first square, I have 2 to the power of 0. Any number to 0 is 1. So on my first square, I have 2 to the power of 0 coins. On my second square, I have 2 to the first power coins. 2 to the first power is 2. On my third square, I have 2 squared coins. 2 squared is 4. On the fourth square, I have 2 cubed coins. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So as you can see, as we increase our number of squares, our exponent also increases. The first square had 2 to the power of 0 coins. So the exponent is 1 less than the square that we're on. Second square, 2 to the first power. The exponent is 1 less than the square we're on. Third square, 2 to the second power. The exponent is 1 less than the square we're on, and so forth. So then how many pennies will be on the 64th square? Well, we know that we're going to have a base of 2, and our exponent is going to be 1 less than the square we're on. So we'd have 2 to the 63rd power number of coins on our 64th square, which is answer C. Francine can ride 16 miles on her bicycle in 45 minutes. At this speed, how many minutes would it take Francine to ride 60 miles? This problem is a good candidate for using a proportion to solve. There's more than one way to solve it, but I like proportion, so I'm going to use a proportion. First, I know that Francine can go 16 miles in 45 minutes. That's going to be my first ratio. So I have 16 miles in 45 minutes. And the key to setting up a successful proportion is to be consistent. So since our first ratio, we have miles to minutes, then our second ratio will also be miles to minutes. So they want to know how many minutes it would take Francine to ride 60 miles. So my miles is 60, and my minutes is what I'm trying to find, so that's where I'll put a variable. To solve a proportion, we cross multiply. 16 times x is 16x, and that equals 60 times 45. 0. 6 times 5 is 30, carry the 3. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 27. So 2,700. And then we solve for x by dividing both sides by 16. So x equals, and now I need to find out what 2,700 divided by 16 is. 16 goes into 2,700 one time. And that's 16, and we subtract and get 11. Then we bring down our 0. We could use 15 as a compatible number to see how many times 15 would go into 110. So we have 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105. So 7 times. So let's see if 16 will go into 110 7 times. 7 times 6 is 42. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 is 11. And that's a little too big, which means I know 16 goes into 110 6 times. So 16 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. And that works. So we need to subtract, and we get 14. Then we bring down our next 0. So we have 140. So I know 16 is going to go into 140 at least 7 times, but it should go even more than that. So let's see what 16 times 8 is. 8 times 6 is 48. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. And that's all we're going to be able to do. So 8 times, and we get 128. And when we subtract those numbers, we get 12. So that means we need to add a decimal and a 0 and bring it down. 16 goes into 120 7 times. 16 times 7, we found earlier, is 112. So we subtract and we get 8. We add another 0 and bring it down. And 16 goes into 80 less than 6 times, and actually exactly 5 times. 16 times 5 is 80. So we subtract and we get a remainder of 0. So that means if it took her 45 minutes to go 16 miles, it should take her 168 75 minutes to go 60 miles. And this is the answer you would grid in. Marjorie buys a package of stocks consisting of 100 shares each of Microsoft and Apple, as well as 200 shares of Garmin at today's closing prices as shown in the table. What is the average price per share that she pays for these stocks? To find this average price per share, first I need to find the total price. Then I have to find the total shares and divide, because this is a ratio, price per share. Price divided by shares. So first I'm going to figure out how much money she spent on these shares. So she got 100 shares of Microsoft. So let's start with Microsoft. She bought 100 shares for $45.14 each. So times 45, 14. And multiplying by 100 just means you move that decimal 2 places to the right. So it's $4,514 that she spent on her Microsoft shares. She also bought 100 shares of Apple. So 100 times, and Apple is $16.90. And again, multiplying by 100 just means to move that decimal 2 places to the right. So she spent $1,690 on her Apple shares. Then she got 200 shares of Garmin. So Garmin 200 times, and Garmin is $29.30. So multiplying by 100 means we move it 2 places to the right, but multiplying by 200 means not only do we multiply or move our decimal 2 places to the right, but we're also going to double that number. So if you double 0, you get 0. If you double 3, you get 6. If you double 9, you get 18, and then we carry the 1 over here, and 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So all I did was multiply 200 times $29.30. So I can use this then to find my total amount of money spent. I'm just going to move this up a little so I have some more room. So I'm going to add these 3 costs together to find my total cost, or my total price. So 4 plus 0 is 4. 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 6 is 16. And then we have 8 plus 6 is 14, plus 5 is 19, plus 1 is 20. 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So that means she spent a total of $12,064 on all of these stocks. That's our price. Now we need to find our shares. And that total can be found right here. Just add these up. 200 plus 100 plus 100. That's a total of 400 shares. So the average price per share would be $12,064 divided by 400 shares. So all we have to do is divide those two numbers. 400 goes into 1206 3 times. 400 times 3 is 1200. Subtract and you get 6. Bring down the 4. 400 does not go into 64 at all, so that's a 0, which means we add a decimal and a 0 and bring it down. 400 goes into 640 1 time, so bring that decimal up. 1 times 400 is 400. Then you subtract and you get 240. Add another 0, bring it down. And 400 goes into 2400 6 times. 400 times 6 is 2400. You subtract and you get a remainder of 0, which means the average price per share is $30.16. Which of the following expressions represents the ratio of the area of a circle to its circumference? We've got some pretty key words here. The first one I see is ratio. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers, like a fraction. And what we're comparing is the area of a circle to its circumference. Well, the area of a circle is pi times radius squared, while the circumference of a circle is 2 times pi times radius. So the area is going to be our numerator. Since it was listed first, area to circumference means that the area should be in the numerator, divided by, this 2 is your division bar, the circumference, 2 times pi times radius. And then we need to simplify. First I see that pi divided by pi cancels. Pi divided by pi is 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. So we can cancel it. And then I can simplify r squared divided by r. When you divide, you subtract the exponents. Or another way to think about it is r squared is r times r. And I'm dividing that by r. So again, you have something divided by itself is 1, or it cancels. So I'm left with just r in the numerator divided by 2 in the denominator, since those r's canceled. So we just have r divided by 2, which is answer E. The figure shows an irregular quadrilateral and the lengths of its individual sides. Which of the following equations best represents the perimeter of the quadrilateral? The perimeter is the distance around a figure. To find the perimeter of any shape, you can simply add all of the sides. So the perimeter is m plus 3 plus m plus 2 plus m plus 2m. And now we just need to combine like terms. So the perimeter is m plus m plus m plus 2m. So that's 1, 2, 3 m's plus 2 m's is a total of 5 m's. Plus 3 plus 2 is 5. So the perimeter is 5m plus 5. Answer D. Arrange the following numbers in order from least to greatest. 2 cubed, 4 squared, 6 to the 0 power, 9, and 10 to the first. The first thing we need to do is simplify these numbers. 2 cubed means 2 times itself 3 times. So that's 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So that is 8. 4 squared is 4 times itself 2 times. 4 times 4 is 16. Now this next one is very interesting because it doesn't matter what this number is. The base number doesn't matter. Any number raised to the 0 power is always 1. 9, of course, is simply 9. And 10 to the first is 10 times itself, 1 time. Or not really 10 times itself at all, it's just 10. You're not multiplying 10 by anything else, because you just have 10 written 1 time. And now they want these numbers in order from least to greatest. So the smallest number would be 1, followed by 8, then 9, 10, and 16. But of course, those are not in our answer choices because the numbers are written as they originally were. So now I'm going to go back and write them the way they were written to begin with. 1 was 6 to the 0. 8 was 2 cubed. 9 was always 9. 10 was from 10 to the first. And 16 was 4 squared. And now we just need to find which answer choice has this as the answer. So of course we should be starting with 6 to the 0, so that takes it down to either B or D. But then the next should be 2 cubed, which is not the case for B. So our answer is D. Find the length of the side labeled X. The triangle represented in the figure is a right triangle, as shown. To find the missing side of any right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where the a and the b are the legs of the right triangle, or the two sides that form the right angle in the right triangle. And C is the hypotenuse of the right triangle, or the side that's across from the right angle. So now we need to substitute the values from our triangle to the Pythagorean theorem. Your A could either be 15 or X, because both of those are legs. So I'm going to use 15. 15 squared plus, and I can replace a B with X. X squared equals, C again is the hypotenuse, which is 25 squared. Now we need to simplify by squaring 15 and 25. 15 squared means 15 times 15, which is 225, plus x squared is equal to 25 squared, which is 25 times 25, or 625. Now we're trying to find what x is, which means we need to get x alone. To do that, the first thing we need to do is subtract 225 from both sides. 225 minus 225 is 0. Bring down the x squared term, bring down the equal sign, and 625 minus 225 is 400. And we're almost done. Again, we're trying to find x, not x squared. So in order to solve for x, we need to do the opposite of squaring x. The opposite of squaring x is square rooting x. So we must square root both sides to solve for x. The square root of x squared is simply x, equals the square root of 400 is 20, since 20 times 20 is 400. And when you square root a number, you're really asking a question. And the question is, what number times itself is 400? That answer is 20. So our answer is B. The diagram shows the outline of a racetrack for skaters, which consists of two long straight sections and two semicircular turns. Given the dimensions shown, which of the following most closely measures the perimeter of the entire track? Well, they've given us that this length here is 150 yards, apparently, since all of our answers are in yards. So that means that this opposite straight side here would also be 150 yards. And actually, just from that amount of information, we can already start eliminating some answers. I know that 180 yards is definitely not enough, because I've got 150 and 150. So we're going to have to skate this 150, skate some more, skate another 150, and skate some more. So we know we're already over 180 yards. We also know it's going to be more than 300 yards, because just the two straight sections or 300 yards. So we can already eliminate that answer choice. And we're down to these 3 possibilities. So that means we need to figure out what this distance is here and here. They told us that these were semicircular turns. That means that semi means half of a circle. So if you take these 2 halves of a circle and you put them together, you get 1 whole circle. So really they're traveling the distance of 1 whole circle in addition to these straight sides here, which means we need to find the circumference of our circle to find the distance around the circle. That's what circumference is. And the circumference of a circle is pi times the diameter of the circle, which they gave us. They told us that this distance is 30. Well, that goes all the way across my circle. So that's my diameter. So my circumference is 30 pi. And pi is about 3. It's actually a little over 3. But since they said most closely measures, we'd probably be okay just using 3 for pi. So our circumference is about 90 yards. Plus, we have these straight sides. So the total distance around the racetrack would be the 150 yards plus 150 yards for our 2 straight sides, plus the about 90 for these 2 curved sides, the semicircular, which is 390 yards. Now, if you'll remember, we rounded pi down. It's actually over 3. We rounded it down to 3. So really our answer is a little bit higher than 390, which is answer choice D, 395 yards. In a game of chance, 3 dice are cast simultaneously. What is the probability that all 3 will land with a 6 showing? Well, the probability of just 1 dice landing with a 6 showing is 1 out of 6. Since one of the numbers is a 6 out of a total of 6 numbers. And the other 2 dice have the same probability. So times 1/6 times 1/6. All of these events are independent of each other, meaning they don't affect each other, which is why we just multiply the 3 probabilities of the 3 dice together. So that means that the probability is 1 out of 6 times 6 is 36, times 6 is 216. So 1 in 216, which if you really think about it, makes a lot of sense. It's not very likely that when you roll 3 dice, you're going to get 3 6s. It's very unlikely. It doesn't happen very often. Maybe 1 time out of 216 times that you cast those dice. If 12 divided by x is equal to 30 divided by 6, what is the value of x? This is a proportion. A proportion is a ratio set equal to a ratio. And a ratio is simply the comparison of 2 numbers, or a fraction. And proportions are pretty cool because their cross products are equal to each other. That means that 12 times 6 is equal to x times 30, which we could simplify to say 72 is equal to 30x. And then we can solve for x by dividing both sides by 30. So 72 divided by 30. 30 goes into 72 2 times, which gives us 60. We subtract and we get 12. So we add a decimal and a 0 and bring down the 0. And 30 goes into 120 4 times. 30 times 4 is 120. We subtract and get 0. So that means that 2 4/10 is equal to x, which is answer B. A combination lock uses a 3-digit code. Each digit can be any of the 10 available integers 0 through 9. How many different combinations are possible? In this probability problem, there are 3 independent events. Independent meaning they don't affect each other. So to find the possible outcomes, we would have to find the product of the possible outcomes for these 3 independent events. So the possible outcomes would be first the possible outcomes for the first digit, 10, since there are 10 available numbers, times the possible outcomes for the second digit, which again is 10 integers, times the possible outcomes for the third digit, which is again 10. So the probability is 10, or the possible outcomes is 10 times 10, which is 100, times 10, which is 1,000 possible outcomes. This is the quicker way to do it. Of course, you can always see by actually writing the combinations. 0, 0, 0 would be the first. Then 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, 0, 0, 3, 0, 0, 4, 5, 6, etc., all the way up to 999, which makes it seem like there are 999 possible outcomes. But really, we have to count this first one, the 0, 0, 0, which gives us the total of 1,000 possible outcomes. Lauren had $80 in her savings account. When she received her paycheck, she made a deposit, which brought the balance up to $120. By what percentage did the total amount in her account increase as a result of this deposit? This is a percent increase problem, and there's a formula for that. The formula to find a percent of change is to find the amount of change, divide that by the original amount, and then multiply that amount by 100. And the reason you multiply by 100 is because when you divide, you'll get a decimal answer, and to change a decimal to a percent, you multiply by 100. Or simply move the decimal 2 places to the right. So first we need to find our amount of change. The amount of change is found by subtracting the 2 amounts. So she started at $80 and her balance went up to $120. So the change is 120 minus 80, divided by the original amount. So what she had in her account before she made her deposit, the $80. And then we multiply that by 100. So the percent change is 120 minus 80, 40, divided by 80 times 100. To simplify this, we can first cancel a 0. So we have 4/8 times 100. And 4/8 can be simplified to 1/2, or since we want to change it to a percent, 5/10, which again is equivalent to 4/8 or 1/2. So we multiply that times 100. This is our decimal, but we want a percent. So multiplying by 100 simply moves your decimal 2 places to the right. And we have to fill this empty seat with a 0. So it's 50%. Was a 50% increase. Answer A. A motorcycle manufacturer offers 3 different models, each available in 6 different colors. How many different combinations of model and color are available? There are a couple of different ways we could figure out this problem. First, I'm going to show you a visual representation. So if we say our models are A, B, and C. These are the 3 different models of cars you can get. And then for colors, we use the numbers 1 through 6, since there are 6 colors. Then you could get Model A in color 1, color 2, color 3, color 4, color 5, or color 6. Same thing with Model B. You could get Model B in color 1, color 2, color 3, color 4, color 5, or color 6. And finally, the same with Model C. Color 1, color 2, color 3, color 4, color 5, and color 6. And if we count up all of these different combinations, we have 6 for Model A, 6 for Model B, and 6 for Model C, or 6 times 3, which is 18. So instead of writing this all out, we could have taken our 6 colors and multiplied it by our 3 models. 3 times 6 is 18, so there are 18 different model and color combinations. Carrie wants to decorate her party with bundles of balloons containing 3 balloons each. Balloons are available in 4 different colors. There must be 3 different colors in each bundle. How many different kinds of bundles can she make? With this kind of a problem, since our numbers are so small, you could just make up some colors. How about red, blue, green, and yellow? Because the balloons come in 4 different colors. And she wants to make bundles with 3 balloons each. And they must be 3 different colors. So we could make a bundle that is red, blue, and green all together. We could also do a bundle that is red, blue, and yellow. And then we could do a bundle that is red, green, and yellow. And those are all the bundles of balloons that we can do with red in them. So now let's move on to blue. We could put blue, green, and yellow together. And that's it. There are no other combinations of 3 balloons with these 4 colors where there are 3 different colors. So that means there's a total of 4 different kinds of bundles that she can make. We can do this mathematically using the formula for a combination. A combination is found by doing n factorial divided by n minus k factorial times k factorial, where n is the number of items and k is basically how many you choose at a time or taken at a time. So in our case, we have 4 items. We have 4 different colors of balloons. So our n is 4, but we can only choose 3 at a time because we want 3 in each bunch. So our k is 3. So our combination would be 4 factorial divided by 4 minus 3 factorial times 3 factorial. And all I did was substitute 4 for n and 3 for k. Simplifying that, 4 factorial just means to do 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Divided by 4 minus 3 is 1, 1 factorial is just 1. Times 3 factorial, which is 3 times 2 times 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 1 divided by 1 is 1. So we're left with that C equals 4. There are 4 different combinations you can make. So either way you do it, we get 4. Triangle ABC is a right triangle, and angle ACB is 30 degrees. What is the measure of angle BAC? Well, the first thing I want to do is fill in this information, that angle ACB is 30. ACB is this angle right here, and it's 30 degrees. So I know 2 out of the 3 angles of my triangle. And I know that the 3 angles of a triangle add to be 180. So that means that this 90-degree angle plus this 30-degree angle plus the measure of angle BAC right here equals 180. The first thing I need to do is combine like terms. 90 plus 30 is 120, plus the measure of angle BAC is 180 degrees. To solve for the measure of angle BAC, we need to subtract 120 from both sides. 120 minus 120 is 0. Bring down the measure of angle BAC equals 180 minus 120 is 60. So that means the measure of angle BAC is 60 degrees. Chan receives a bonus from his job. He pays 30% in taxes, gives 30% to charity, and uses another 25% to pay off an old debt. He has $600 remaining from his bonus. What was the total amount of Chan's bonus? First, I want to start with totaling the percentage that he spent or used, the percentage that is not left. So he pays 30% in taxes, gives 30% to charity, and uses the 25% to pay off an old debt. So that's a total of 85% that he has used, which means he had 15% left. And the $600 is the 15% of his total. $600 is 15% of the total amount of his bonus. 600 is equals, change the percent to a decimal, of means to multiply, and we don't know the total, so use a variable, like t. And now we just need to solve for t. So divide both sides by 15/100. So 600 divided by 15/100. We need to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So we do the same to 600, add 2 zeros, and 15 goes into 60 4 times. 15 times 4 is 60. You subtract and get 0. When you bring down 0, 15 goes into 0 0 times, and that's just going to keep happening 2 more times until we get 4,000. So what was the total amount of Chan's bonus? $4,000.